The audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small, and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family, and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Everyone, and welcome to the Kulturecast. I'm Chris Stachiw, and at the moment, everything is in balance. I'm not joined by Eric. He is currently nursing his throat, and, I should have thought about that before it came out of my mouth like that. He's nursing his throat, let's just put it that way. However, I am joined by my favorite Canadian filmmaker and the man who seems to only be around for Marvel movies now. It seems to be the way it goes. Yeah, it's so fucking strange. Mr. Matt Campagna.
Thanks for having me.
And we are joined, this is his first time, we're popping his Kulturecast cherry, as it were. I've been asking for him to be on a Kulturecast for a while, and finally he's taking time out of his busy schedule to join us, Mr. Tucker Boyd.
Welcome.
Welcome, fuck yourself. Welcome, go fuck yourself. I'm welcoming you. And on this episode, we're talking about, I would say, 2018's most anticipated film, or one of the most anticipated films of the last, I guess you could say, decade, since Iron Man. Marvel's Infinity War, a film that broke the fucking record. Multiple records, but namely the most important record, which is largest opening weekend of a film ever, beating Star Wars The Force Awakens, the current opening weekend number for Marvel Infinity War, or Avengers Infinity War, whatever you want to call it. It's $258 million. Film is directed by the Russo brothers and stars too many people to list because we'd spend 10 minutes listing them. Let's just say it stars everyone from the last 10 movies except for the people that died. Maybe?
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. To see if we could become something more. So when they needed us, we could fight the battles
that they never could.
like to lose. To feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail all the same. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny still arrives.
Evacuate the city. Engage all defenses. And get this man a shield.
Fun isn't something one considers when balancing the universe. But this does put a smile on my face. Who the hell are you guys?
Spoilers immediately. We'll talk a little non-spoilers, but we are going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film, I'm sorry. You should go see it, unless you don't like movies, which then why are you listening to this podcast? But if you haven't seen the film yet, we're going to talk a little bit non-spoilers, and then we'll get straight into spoilers. So, with all of the intro nonsense out of the way, I am curious, Tucker, since this is your first time on the Kulturecast, what did you think of the 10-year build-up film known as Infinity War?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. As this big finale, I could definitely see why they took the route that they did with that ending, you know. But yeah, overall, I thought it was very well done. I thought it was a good payoff to a 10-year wait. I think everything connected pretty well and it balanced out, no pun intended.
What about you, Matt?
Oh my God, I enjoyed the hell out of this. I've been waiting since 1991 to watch this movie because that's when I fell in love with the Infinity Gauntlet comic series, and getting to see it on the big screen after 10 years of cinematic buildup was quite literally the cinematic event of a lifetime. They weren't hyping the advertising any further. It's actually that, and I loved it.
You know, I know the last time you were on, Matt, we talked about Star Wars The Last Jedi, a film that you and I diverged on.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone on the podcast was in a different spot with that movie. And I have since rewatched it. My feelings haven't changed, but if we're talking about a film that has build-up surrounding it, because Last Jedi had a lot of build-up surrounding it, coming out of Force Awakens, which was a return to form for Star Wars, and you have a lot of build-up for this movie. I mean, this movie there has never been a film like this released before.
No, and Marvel just keeps doing that. And
right.
And each time you're like, yeah, whatever, most expensive African-American starring movie, yeah, whatever. And then it's mind-boggling. And then it's like, oh, yeah, whatever. The first time they've ever made a bunch of characters from different tentpoles come into one tentpole, and the Avengers was amazing. And so when you just keep being the best thing, craziest thing ever, you know, Avengers Age of Ultron is what happens now and again when it just doesn't live up to being better than the last one.
I didn't hate Age of Ultron, though.
No, I really liked Age of Ultron. I just don't think it's
great.
the achievement. It's not a bigger achievement than Avengers was.
No.
However, Avengers Infinity War is the biggest achievement they've ever had, and it's incredible.
And it's an achievement on numerous fronts. I do have some problems with it, and those are spoiler-specific problems, and we'll talk about those, but I do have some problems with it being a quote-unquote informed fan or a comic book reader, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself. A smart asshole who watches Marvel movies and you know the source material, which is essentially our Thor Ragnarok podcast in a nutshell. you and I both being like, well, this isn't exactly source material. And it's like, well, no shit, it's not, because of course they're not going to cram like 50, 60 comics worth of material into a film. And this film is not source material at all.
No, and I mean, when you look at Age of Ultron, the biggest problem with Age of Ultron existing was that Ant-Man didn't exist yet. And so it's like, from a comic book nerdy source material perspective, you can't have Ultron without Hank Pym. So it was just dumb that they were doing it at all. And going into Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, without having Adam Warlock on screen yet is a bit of a weird choice for me. But, Nebula's in play, and I think as long as you got her, you've got an ending.
And I think the whole Adam Warlock thing is interesting, as a whole, because it doesn't seem like they want to introduce him anytime soon either. They said they wanted to try to introduce him in the next phase, but I don't think they were wanting to do it, but, to tie into Infinity War.
I mean, they teased it at the end of Guardians 2. Spoilers.
Yeah, I think James Gunn just likes Adam Warlock as a cosmic hero, not necessarily as the major solution for the Thanos problem.
Yeah, it seems like they're really gonna, obviously not talking any spoilers yet, but they will. It seems like with this build-up, obviously there's a lot of hype around Captain Marvel coming into the whole situation and being a big help with Thanos. So I'm interested to see how they do that, because when Captain Marvel comes out in June, is it June?
Captain Marvel comes out
in March, I think.
In March. So it comes out before Infinity War by 2 months. Or a month and a half, depending on if they move the movie up again, which I guarantee they probably will.
More than likely, yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that we actually get a prequel movie this summer, because Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place before Infinity War.
And I'm assuming that the ending of that movie will tie into how they deal with the conclusion of this film.
I imagine.
Assuming the way that these films are being released, it would mean something happens in Ant-Man and the Wasp that ties directly into something you've already seen in Infinity War. It's intentional.
I imagine the last moments of Infinity War will line up like temporally in the same spot as the last moments of Ant-Man, so that technically everything's at that same, finger snap.
And Ant-Man has a reason to get involved.
Yeah.
Because,
or
spoilers, because no spoilers, Ant-Man is nowhere in the promotional materials for this movie, neither was Hawkeye. So those aren't really spoilers, they're not in this movie.
Yeah, they didn't promise those characters, and they didn't deliver those characters, so that seems just about right. But I'm curious, because while Ant-Man is a prequel by, a couple of weeks, Captain Marvel is a prequel by a couple of decades. It takes place in the 90s. So it'll be quite interesting to see how a character who is in play well before there's an Infinity Gauntlet to worry about, it'll be neat to see what Captain Marvel's ending does and how it dovetails with the ending of Infinity War, because we've got characters coming back from the dead for a movie that takes place in the 90s. We've got Ronan is back for the Captain Marvel film, and Nick Fury is going to have two eyes, so it should be quite interesting to see how all of that ties together.
Well, let's just I'm just going to ask you guys quick. Three of us are in accord. We would Sokovia Accord. We would suggest Infinity War. Go watch it. Yes. Just pre-spoiler suggestion. Go see it. Okay. So here on out, spoilers. Okay. So I'm gonna run down this list real quick. Xandarians, Heimdall, Loki, Gamora, all of the Black Order, the Collector, Vision, Bucky, Groot, Black Panther, Drax, Mantis, Star-Lord, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Falcon, Scarlet Witch, Maria Hill, Nick Fury, and just half of the population of the fucking universe. Those are the people that died in this movie. I guarantee you no one saw that coming, at least not all of them.
Well, I expected everyone to die. So I was kind of surprised when only the OG Avengers were left over at the end. So that was kind of a neat choice. I think it dovetails into an Avengers 4 that is largely a farewell, a swan song for all of our favorite characters from the first Avengers movie. we didn't get to see much Captain America in this movie because we were too busy with the billion other characters. We got to see a bit of Tony Stark, which was great, but ultimately, I think we've killed off everyone but the original Avengers so that we can have an Avengers 4 that celebrates those characters one last time before they all die, and really die. Like, turning to ashes at the end is like, emotional in a lot of ways, but the only characters that really died in this movie were Loki and Heimdall. Like, those were the big real deaths. Gamora maybe, but she's attached to the Soul Stone, so it's possible she comes back, because when you're talking to baby Gamora inside of the Soul Stone, she doesn't seem totally dead.
When I mentioned at the a couple minutes ago that I had a problem with Infinity War, my problem as a quote unquote smart fan or someone who is in the know or has read comics or knows about the movies that Marvel has planned and are coming out with, which is it's like secret information. They talk about it. If you go to any movie news website, you will see this information laid out plain as day. Spider-Man is coming. A Spider-Man fucking sequel's coming out.
Yeah, it's in the trade, the release dates for Spider-Man 2, as well as the plan to make Black Panther 2. Like, these characters
Guardians
aren't dead.
of the Galaxy 3. What are they? Rocket Raccoon running around?
Oh, sweet rabbit. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, so those deaths are a little cheap. A little hollow. Like, I understand why they're there, and it makes sense in the story, in the universe, with the climax of the film, but I'm just sitting and thinking like, okay, they're dead. How do we undo this? And are they all coming back? Who's dead? Who's not dead? Who's dead pre-snap,
I think it's pretty safe to say anybody who is turned to ashes is not going to stay dead. Anyone who died by other means, like Vision, probably less likely to come back, but not impossible. And I think that the real trick now is going to be making sure that the audience doesn't feel robbed, because that was like Tom Holland gave the most beautiful Dr. Whovian death when he just turned to ashes in Tony Stark's arms, and I feel like we're going through that 1 out of 15 million scenarios that leads to actual success. And it's a long way around. And as long as the audience doesn't feel cheapened by their experience of watching all these characters die, only to have so many of them come back, then it will still have been a successful emotional arc.
And I've also heard stories of people, and I don't know if you guys can, reinforce this. It didn't happen in any of my showings, but I have had friends tell me that they were in theaters with people that were crying. And obviously these people aren't comic book fans, so they are experiencing these deaths of these characters as a sense of finality, which there hasn't been a lot of death in the Marvel universe that isn't final. Most of the villains die at the ends of their movies that they're the villain of. Rarely do big characters die, unless they're like the teacher of someone. So there hasn't been a lot of finality with...
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster. You know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week, and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello and welcome to Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. My name is Hunter. In this podcast, I'll be joined by a different guest each week to discuss a classic Western movie or TV show. I've been a fan of classic Westerns for as long as I can remember, and in recent years, they've become very nostalgic for me. I love the aesthetic, the tropes, and I love seeing different filmmakers' takes on them. At their best, they're incredibly entertaining, rewatchable, and some of my all-time favorite movies are Westerns. We'll mostly focus on Western movies made in Hollywood, but we'll also be covering spaghetti Westerns, and one thing I'm very excited to get into are Western TV shows. I've got some amazing guests coming on the show, film professors, historians, and podcasters. And Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys is part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, and many guests on the show will be from other shows on the network. Thanks for listening.
deaths in the Marvel Universe. So I don't know. Did you guys see any of that? Of people like crying or?
Oh yeah, I did. So I went to the opening night. I had a sold out showing. So my theater was very enthusiastic and giddy the whole time. But when that final 5 minutes of the film hit, it was just like dead silence. Everybody was pumped at first. Everybody was excited, ready to go. And then throughout the whole movie, everybody did well. And then that 5 minutes hit, and it just was silence. Nothing after that. There was no applause at the end of the movie. It was just silence. And you could definitely hear, the crying and the mourning of all of these characters, which, it's really interesting because I was thinking about it, this, for us, we knew that this was coming. Like, we knew that in Infinity War there were going to be deaths, and some of them would be final, some of them would not. But the thing is that the casual Marvel fans, the casual moviegoers, did not know this going into the movie. So their night just got completely ruined because at this point, they don't know any of the extended universe, Adam Warlock, Captain Marvel, any of that. They don't know how they're going to reverse this. They don't know if they're going to reverse this. And I think that since Avengers pulled that sense of finality off so well, that's one of the big reasons that I thought it was such an amazing film.
Well, and that last scene, so I went and saw the film again today. There's no score during that scene. It is absolute silence during that scene, which I think helps reinforce this kind of, this doesn't feel like this belongs in a Marvel movie. That feels like it belongs in a comic book movie made by a lesser company to DC. Sorry. I had a piece of shit lodged in my throat called the DC Extended Universe. Marvel has now made a darker, more serious film than DC has tried to make. And they made it while being entertaining and while still being able to maintain a sense of humor as well. And I think for everyone that's like, oh, these Marvel movies are so jokey and they're so lighthearted. It's like, watch Infinity War, where I didn't get a sense at all in that film that the good guys ever had a chance. Because, oh, by the way, the villain in the movie is the fucking film's protagonist. Oh, and by the way, he's also full CGI. Learn from that, DC, because you had a full CGI villain who sucked ass in Justice League.
Pretty amazing that, within a heartbeat of Steppenwolf being just a cinematic disaster, just a CGI abortion. And then we get to see Thanos, where another actor, Hines has a beautiful voice, but Brolin not only had his incredible voice, but he had every little facial tick, every little wince, every possible expression beautifully rendered onto Thanos. And it just goes to show what happens when a studio plans and carefully executes that plan on time and on schedule and on budget versus what DC did, where they tried to make a release date, squeezed out the wrong kind of movie, and just made a mess all over the cinematic legacy of Superman.
Not just cinematic, just legacy, period.
Yeah.
Do not contain that to the films, because I think that is giving them a pass.
That's fair. Yeah. Christopher Reeve is an epic part of who Superman is. And, Henry Cavill's horrible mustache removal is now also a part of who Superman is. But hopefully Brian Michael Bendis can fix all of that for us.
Well, he's already on the road. The road is being paved as we speak.
I was glad that you brought up the idea of knowing that the superheroes didn't have a chance in the end. And one of the lines that really, really hit me, and I don't know why, was when they were on Titan and they had almost gotten the Infinity Gauntlet off of Thanos, and then Thanos obviously snaps back into it, grabs the gauntlet, and then gets zipped back into Wakanda. The line that really hit me is when Star-Lord just looks dead at the Avengers and says, "Did we just lose?" Because I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it's because, they never have lost. really. I mean, if you think about it, they have always known that they were going to be okay in the end. And as a fan, you have always known that they were going to be okay in the end. And that's why Marvel movies never really had that sense of finality to it until Infinity War came out. And I don't know, that line just really got to me, because I was like, it's because it hits hard, because they really haven't ever lost, and they've never had a challenge like this. Really, the closest thing that has come to Thanos was maybe Ego in Guardians 2, and only the Guardians were the ones that faced them. It wasn't even the rest of the Avengers. So I don't know. I was glad that you had brought that up, because that line had stuck with me since I've seen the movie. And I thought it was just really well placed, because it makes a lot of sense in the end.
Yeah, we're used to a structure of, a really hard second act that turns it all around for our hero, and by the end of the third act, they've overcome. And the idea that this was that film for the villain, that Thanos had a really hard second act, having to deal with the Red Skull and how to get that Soul Stone and what he had to sacrifice. And then, it was worth it, because Thanos got what he wanted at the end. And, I felt like he was just enjoying a sunrise on Gamora's home planet.
And for the love of God, can we talk about the fact that Red Skull's back for even 5 minutes?
Can we talk about what an incredible, just amazing impression of Hugo Weaving that was?
Ross Marquand, the guy from Walking Dead? Yeah.
It was great.
Well, and here's the thing, and I'll be the first person to admit it. One of my biggest issues with Marvel movies has always been they take these villains that are, like, putting it in my colloquialism, the swinging dick villains of these heroes. Red Skull is Captain America's swinging dick villain. He's the big villain for Captain America. He is the end-all be-all of, he's the Joker to Captain America's Batman. And he died in the first movie, and I can never get past that. Well, I know, but now we know he didn't.
I always knew he didn't. It was so obvious. It was so obvious they were not going to kill the Red Skull with
here's the thing.
the Tesseract.
Theoretically, if they had never shown this scene in Infinity War, he is, for all intents and purposes, dead.
Nope. I've been waiting. I've been waiting patiently for 8 years to get Hugo Weaving back, and I'll take an impression of Hugo Weaving. That was good.
Do you think that there's anything past this? I hope so.
I don't, because we're gonna lose Cap in Endgame in Avengers 4. So when we lose Steve Rogers, his perfect villain isn't going to be nearly as important. What happens between Captain America II and Red Skull wouldn't be nearly as interesting.
Right. Well, and I think that whole what happens in the fourth movie, we'll get to that. We'll close this out with that. However, my favorite part of this Infinity War film was pretty much anything that happened on Titan. I feel like a lot of the stuff that happened with Captain America.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
got a little sidelined just for timing. It didn't feel like he was as much of a focus. I feel like that's going to be rectified in the fourth movie. And for me personally, I felt like anything with Peter Dinklage was not good.
It was not necessary. I mean, Peter Dinklage has...
really stupid.
Peter Dinklage has for like half a decade, like 6 years, 7 years now, proven that he has the all-time worst British accent. And so the idea that we would take that terrible British accent from Game of Thrones and have him try to do it again as a giant, like, I liked the fact that he was a giant, but for the love of God, let the man speak in his own tongue. He cannot do accents.
I actually have to disagree that I think it was unnecessary. I think that maybe his character was unnecessary, but the whole idea of why he was there was not. Because, in my opinion, there's a possibility that what had happened there was, it's going to play a bigger part in the story later on. Because when they get to his base or whatever, I can't remember the name of it, but when they get there, he's got the Infinity Gauntlet mold. And, they think it's pretty well intact. Because I had watched a video explaining all of this stuff earlier. But basically, if in Avengers 4, they do so happen to get the mold of that Infinity Gauntlet, they could always make another gauntlet and then use the stones. Because what happened to the Infinity Gauntlet after? Because it got destroyed. It's like all charred up and everything, but the stones are still intact. So if the Avengers can somehow manage to get all of those stones and put it into a new Infinity Gauntlet, that could change the game.
I just don't want to see Peter Dinklage's character again, though. That's my point. For the record, I just had my mind blown. I didn't realize Peter Dinklage was not British.
Oh my God. He's
I'm not joking. I know now, but oh my God, I did not realize. And this is, how did I not? Oh my God.
Yeah, his accent.
I just thought he had a really bad British accent, and like he was like Scottish or something.
No, he's American as
oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Yeah. Okay. So for the record, then, yeah, it's even more egregious that he's doing. Oh dear God. Well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fuck me. Just the thing is with Peter Dinklage in this movie is the humor, and I know Tucker may disagree with me. The humor worked for me in a lot of spots, but the humor with his character didn't, because his character was one note, a joke the entire time.
Well,
and he wasn't even in a funny scenario. Everything about what was happening there was so sad. And so the idea that he was going to be a source of comedy in that scenario was a stretch anyway.
Right. And that's what, Chris, you said I might disagree with you. I don't really disagree with you that, his humor was bad because it was bad. Like, the problem, it wasn't that the humor was forced. It was that it was so unnecessarily placed, and it just wasn't, it didn't fit very well. And after watching Avengers the second time, I realized that maybe the comedy wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And, I never thought it was really as bad the first time that I watched it, but you know how I feel about Ragnarok's comedy, and I'm really glad that they didn't try to carry that over with Thor's success, and I'm glad they didn't try to carry that that much forced comedy into Infinity War, because that really just would have killed the vibe, honestly.
Ragnarok is a comedy first, a Thor movie second, and I think that's...
And a Marvel movie distant third.
Right, and that's something that a lot of people don't like.
Yeah, because Thor was set up by Age of Ultron to be like some heavy lifting Infinity Stone exposition, and then Taika Waititi showed up with this really fun, wacky, ridiculous idea for a Thor movie that honestly is way better than the other Thor movies. But it is a really bad Marvel movie in that it helps develop nothing. It moves nothing forward. And all of the heavy lifting and all the sacrifice that happened in Age of Ultron to try to build all of that world that, Joss Whedon had to fight to be able to still make a movie that made sense and we cared about the characters in. The fact that it was all just tossed out the window in the first scene of Ragnarok made that just such a bad Marvel movie. That's not what they do.
Well, and that's the other thing about looking at kind of the continuity from Ragnarok, which the only thing Ragnarok did was make Loki a more sympathetic character, only to have his ass get killed, and I hope he's dead for good.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so. I mean, I liked his character in Ragnarok, and that was like a good swan song for his character in that movie, but he needs to be dead and stay dead.
And we got to find out what happened to Valkyrie, because she's got to be fine.
Well, Matt sitting there rocking back and forth. Korg and Valkyrie, they're okay, right? Korg and Valkyrie, they're okay, right? You and the rest of the internet.
Oh my God!
I mean, there is a throwaway line that says half of them escaped. So
only half of them were killed. So hopefully means
until shown otherwise, I would say that unless they die on screen, the characters that have been established as important in the universe are still alive.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with, which is the same philosophy by which Red Skull was still alive.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, is Shuri still alive? Like, yeah, no shit, she's still alive. Like, or Wong in Doctor Strange's kind of cinematic world. Like, yeah. So I do find it funny though, and I've talked to some people about this. People's opinions on certain characters changed from Infinity War because they watched Infinity War and then went and watched their previous film. Namely Doctor Strange. A lot of people I know who were like, fucking Doctor Strange, such a boring movie. They went and rewatched and they're like, I kind of like that movie.
Well, yeah, now that you kind of like the character, because that's not a great movie, but it does a serviceable job of introducing a guy you're going to need a lot. And once you like him, you can go back and enjoy it more.
Doesn't help that Rachel McAdams is not great in that movie.
No, that does not help.
The same thing can be said about the first two Thor movies with Natalie Portman. Rachel McAdams is better than Natalie Portman, but neither one of them are... I don't know, the whole damsel in distress thing in the Marvel Universe doesn't really work anymore when they've got strong female characters.
Well, the thing about Natalie Portman was that's Thor. So I found her very interesting because I know that Jane Foster becomes Thor eventually.
Yeah, but not in this universe.
Well, I mean, she does still have in her contract another Thor movie. They just haven't used it yet. And they weren't going to find a good use for her to do anything in this or in Ragnarok.
Hugo Weaving has more movies under contract too, and they didn't force him to come back to do the voice.
Yeah, but he went on record very publicly as hating his experience making that movie. So
fair enough.
He and Eccleston both, like, there's not a great history of Thor villains being happy with the work they did. But I feel like when you look at Rachel McAdams' character, she was showing up and being Night Nurse again. But we've already got a really great night nurse in The Defenders because, I mean, Rosario Dawson is that character already. So we don't need another one. And I much preferred Rosario Dawson in that role because, I don't know, I got enough boring white chicks in this series.
Well, that's my point. Just damsels in distress in general. Now in the Marvel Universe, it's like, it's not as interesting. Not when you've got like female characters that kind of kick ass.
Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
So
yeah, like Liv Tyler's character hasn't been seen again because we've got a much more interesting love interest for Bruce Banner in Black Widow. So you no longer need Rob.
That Hulk movie doesn't exist. Come on, that Hulk movie doesn't exist. Okay, just for all intents and purposes, that shit's gone, right?
One thing that I was most impressed by in Infinity War was the fact that every single one of the previous films in the series was in some way referenced or necessary. And the way in which Incredible Hulk was necessary was that Ross was there. Thunderbolt Ross was in that scene, and if it wasn't for that movie, he wouldn't have been set up as that character. So that was beautiful. Even the Dark Elf, even Malekith got mentioned. Red Skull came back. Like, there was not a single movie in the the entire 18-film series that wasn't in some way referenced in this movie, and I think that's just a masterstroke.
I agree with that. How did you guys feel about the children of Thanos?
They were boring CGI, but there they were.
I think it's kind of a missed opportunity a little bit. I mean, outside of the Ebony Maw, who was great because he was given more than like 5 minutes of screen time.
Okay, so speaking of the children, this has to do with Thanos' technology in a way. So something that kind of bothered me a little bit. So you know the Q ships, right? The ship that comes down into New York and then it starts, like basically causes like a tornado and causes panic and all that stuff. So with that first encounter, keeping that in mind, when we cut to Scotland with Scarlet Witch and Vision, Ebony Maw, maybe it was Ebony Maw, I don't remember, but, some of the children come down into Scotland and try to take the stone from Vision.
That was Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight. The other two. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
CGI 1 and CGI 2.
Okay.
That's basically.
So why when they dropped and landed in New York, it caused havoc and everybody noticed, it was like flinging stuff into the air and it was destroying the city. But it didn't do that when they came to Scotland. When they came to Scotland, they didn't even realize they were there. They caught them off guard, but they landed in the same ship.
It was nighttime?
Convenience. Convenience. I don't know, it was nighttime. Isn't it crazy that a character like Corvus Glaive and a character like Proxima Midnight didn't exist? They have existed after the MCU started. These characters were introduced in 2013.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They haven't been around very long. In fact, the big guy's name used to be Black Dwarf. But I think they changed his name to something else for the movie. But, the big boring guy who never said any words wasn't the most interesting one by a mile. But the fact that Ebony Maw managed to be a standout in any way, I think, is owed to the fact that he was the only one who didn't punch anyone. He spoke. He was in conversation with people. He was intimidating because of his personality. Whereas the other ones were just like, I've got a sharp stick. I've got a sharper stick. I've got a big hammer. And it was like, that's your defining trait. Great.
And then they all die.
Yep.
So...
Well, I think it makes sense because there are 6 children of Thanos and only 2 of them matter.
Yeah. Yeah, fair.
So they may as well be very uninteresting colors, gray and white and black, because what matters is the green one and the blue one.
Well, and that's the thing, again, like, in the comic, they're the Black Order. They're not even technically children of Thanos. That's just whatever they changed that in the movie, sure.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Whatever. But it doesn't really matter because Thanos is such a good villain. Nobody else matters. But that's the thing. Those villains, those characters, the children of Thanos, they could have been standalone villains for any character in any of the movies.
Oh, yeah.
They would have been pretty intimidating villains. But in this movie, because of how intimidating Thanos is, they're just kind of, who fucking cares?
Yeah, they were scarier than Malekith and certainly scarier than Yellow Jacket to essentially... Yellow Jacket wasn't even a character. It wasn't even a villain. It was just an alter ego of Hank Pym himself. So it was kind of weird.
It was scarier than Killmonger.
Hey, I liked Killmonger. Killmonger had a point of view.
Killmonger was cool. He was just a yellow-suited Black Panther. Whatever you say, Matt, you cannot defend the third act of Black Panther. It is...
He was the Golden Jaguar. That's
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the third act of Black Panther is the antithesis of the third act of this movie. It's uninteresting CGI when the third act of this movie is interesting CGI.
Well, the third act of almost every Marvel movie ever has been the culmination of the evil twin. And it's like, oh, great, so... the ugly Captain America with the red face versus the good-looking Captain America with the blonde hair. Great. Punching.
The yellow Black Panther versus the purple one, because if the suit was just completely black, you wouldn't be able to tell him apart from the yellow one.
Yep. There's no argument against that. That's just terrible evil twinitis that every origin movie from the beginning of the Marvel Universe has always had. At least you could kind of tell that Ironmonger was slightly different technology than Iron Man, but only a little bit.
No, and that's the thing. That's the Marvel formula. And this film broke that formula.
Just shatters it, yeah.
Yeah. And again, talking about kind of the way the film ends, and we talked a little bit about the scene where the characters just dissipate into dust or ashes or whatever you want to call it. The way the film ends, I think caught everybody, myself included, off guard. I mean, it's very un-Marvel.
I was expecting that to happen, but I wasn't expecting the people that died to die. I wasn't expecting Spider-Man especially. Was the big one for me, and I think that was the big one for a lot of people. Black Panther, I wasn't expecting all of these, big name deaths, and, I had discussed this with you the night that I saw it, Chris, and, talking about, how many big deaths there were, and, it was a surprising number, and it was a big move. Like, the balls on Marvel for just going through with that in the first place was very impressive, honestly.
Well, and again, I think for me, it leaves the Marvel Universe in a place that I personally have never felt, which is I am excited and ready to see the next film in a way that I haven't before with Marvel movies. Like, of course we're going to go see Black Panther because, my cynical answer is, because I have to do a podcast over it, or because of course it's a Marvel movie. But Avengers 4, untitled film, I'm looking forward to it because I want to see how they go where they go from here, not how they go from here. Why is Gamora? But I want to see how they fix what happened.
Yeah.
Because now it's not about what happened. Now it's about how do you get back from that. Because any good story has to have some return to normalcy. Otherwise, it's just a fucking insane story. If they were like, they're all dead and they're dead for good. Just like, that's insane in a good way, but they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
No, they can't bring it all the way back to normal. They have to. I think that the moment where Steve Rogers says we don't trade lives is going to bite them all in the ass because they're going to trade lives, and that's how it's going to work.
I was literally just about to mention that. My whole thing is I feel like they're gonna swap hero for hero. They're gonna bring somebody back as another one gets taken, and that is the moment when the big names, Iron Man, Captain America, all of them are gonna get taken when we thought they were gonna get taken at the end of the first movie. So, there's so many possibilities with what they could do on the reversal of the whole situation. But, like you said, I'm really interested in seeing it. I'm very, I'm anticipating Avengers 4.
Well, and that's the thing is, if you've seen any set photos, you know that and assume that there will be some form of time travel or dimensional travel. They talk about it a little bit with Doctor Strange, talking about I've seen 14,600,000 and something possibilities. There's only one where we win. That's why Iron Man is still alive. Clearly, Iron Man is crucial to how Avengers 4 ends up playing out. So, which also it's kind of a little bit of a nod, kind of like a wink wink to the fans, like, ooh, 14 million theories, but there's only one that's actually going to happen, which I thought was kind of cute, kind of funny in kind of a tongue-in-cheek way. But whatever happens in the next movie, it's got some big shoes to fill, and I'm worried that Marvel has written a check that they may not be able to cash in the next film, if that makes sense. I'm worried. A lot, not really worried, but just a tad worried that with how good this film was, the next film has such big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's wrap this podcast up with a little bit of talking about where are we going from here? What have we seen? So, end credits scene that almost didn't happen, by the way. They talked about not having an end credits scene for the film, which I thought would have been ballsy as fuck, but they had one anyways.
Well, they didn't have a mid-credits scene, which I think was a really great tone, because it allowed that silence to reverberate for minutes and minutes and minutes in the theater. And then when you get to see Nick and Maria driving down the street, you're like, oh, okay, good. The world's okay, and then the world's fucked. And I thought that was wonderful. But getting to see that pager and getting to see it send a message through time was pretty fantastic. It got my entire theater's energy right back up. There was this great big holler of excitement, and that let everybody leave with a little bit more hope in their hearts. And I thought that was a great moment.
Well, and that's the thing that I appreciated about it is apparently they were going to have Captain Marvel in the film at some point, and they cut that out, which I think is good because you don't need to kind of You don't need to give away the cow with the milk. Like, you don't need to give them everything. Just give them a little taste. Just to something. You don't have to be like, oh, and here's Captain Marvel coming down from the sky. It's like, just give them that little taste, just a little preview of what's to come.
There was just too much already in Infinity War for them to introduce a completely new character like Captain Marvel. Maybe, if it was somebody minor that didn't really play that much of a part of the story, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but it's fucking Captain Marvel. Like, she plays a big part in the universe. So adding that character into this clusterfuck of a movie already would have just been a terrible decision. So I'm glad that they went with the way that they did it, and it was a good tease. It was worth it. It was worth staying the extra 5 minutes for the credits.
Bro, 5 minutes? This guy's talking about 5 minutes. Try like 10. God damn, those were some long credits.
Oh yeah, well, with the amount of visual effects going into 5 major characters all being performance capture, yeah, it's going to be a long credit reel.
With the amount of drivers for all those actors. The amount of catering. Oh, my Lord. Oh, man. Well, and again, my kind of final thoughts, and I'm sure that you guys will echo this. It's a shock that this movie is as good as it is for the sheer fact of characters included in the film alone. This is the largest ensemble cast I've ever seen in a film.
I wouldn't call it a shock.
Works.
It's not at all a shock, because we saw what the Russos can do with Civil War. This was just the delivery of a promise, and I think...
But it's different than Civil War, because Civil War wasn't like this in the sense that it wasn't... Like, that's the thing. The reason this film works is because it's the characters broken off into, like, 4 groups. If it had been all the characters in one room talking... or something to that effect, you would have been like, oh, fuck, this movie is just too much.
Yeah, impossible.
You never get all of them together yet. And now you're not going to because of the way they ended the film.
Yeah, and that's a smart move because it gives you time with all the characters as the audience, but it doesn't force you into having one great big scene where they all have to talk to each other.
And it gives you pairings of characters you never thought you wanted. Mm-hmm. Like Thor and Rocket Raccoon.
Thor and Rocket to me is just the best. Every time Thor spoke Groot and was completely able to have a conversation with Groot and just called him Tree. Maybe he thinks his name is Tree in his language. I thought that was great. And I love the fact every time he called him Sweet Rabbit, I was just beside myself with glee. It was such a wonderful, wonderful pairing.
Well, and for me, the pairing of the film that if they end up killing the character, will bum me out the most is if Iron Man does die in the next film, I will be so disappointed that we didn't get to see more of him and Doctor Strange together. Because Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch going back and forth was fantastic.
Yeah.
And Doctor Strange calling Iron Man a douchebag to his face was it's perfect because Iron Man is kind of a dickhead.
Yep.
Not kind of. He's a self-absorbed dickhead.
I was about to say, he's totally an asshole.
Yeah. But, like, a character calling him out for it and him being completely taken aback by it is great. Because, again, you don't see that very often in the Marvel Universe. At least you haven't. Not in that way.
I hope we get to see an awesome facial hair bros high five at some point before the end.
Matt, what would you give Infinity War out of 5?
5. That is one of the most difficult things I've ever seen put to film, and it's done so nearly flawlessly. The biggest flaw I have is that I don't buy Thanos' lack of good planning. If you think the biggest problem is that there isn't enough natural resources in the universe and you have a fucking magic glove that makes anything happen, why don't you just double the resources instead of having the population? It seems like a very simple solution. Also, when you have one gem on your arm that allows you to put your planet back the way it was, and then you put it back to destroyed, you're just an asshole. Like everything about what Thanos is doing with ultimate power, I find disappointing, but he's a madman. So the Mad Titan can do whatever he wants with it. I'm just not a big fan of his choices.
Well, and I think isn't that the whole point of his character? Like, he has this kind of genocidal plan that you can kind of empathize with what he's trying to accomplish, but his means are so twisted. Like, what he's trying to achieve is,
a better life for everybody, pretty much.
Makes sense, but the way he's going about it is, let's just kill half of everybody, as opposed to unlimited food for everyone. It's like, you fucking idiot. Like, Moron, what are you doing?
But the big problem I have with it is that his original motivation in Infinity Gauntlet makes much more sense for a madman, which is, I want to impress Death. The hottest girl in the world. I want to give her something. She's going to be so impressed with me. She's going to want me so bad. I'm going to kill half the population of the universe, and it's going to turn her on so much. That was his motivation. And the madness of love, I can totally get behind you doing something totally batshit insane. But if you honestly think you're figuring out the universe's resource problem, I'm not quite as sold.
No, I would agree with you. I mean, obviously it would have taken a little bit more kind of foresight and planning to set up that, because I think it would have been a lot to introduce the Lady Death character in this movie along with everything else.
Yeah, what they would have needed is like a movie immediately before this where they introduced the Goddess of Death and then use... Oh, wait, they did that. They fucking did that.
Yeah, like different Goddess of Death, though, bro.
But it would have sufficed. You have an actual Goddess of Death on the fucking screen. Use her.
But did she die? Who knows?
Nah, it's Cate Blanchett. You can't kill Cate Blanchett.
Unless it's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's another movie.
It's the best movie.
Go fuck yourself. What would you give the film out of 5, Tucker?
I'd probably give it a 4.5. I think it deserves a 4.5. I wouldn't exactly give it a 5 because I did have some very, very, very minor issues with it. But other than that, it was very well done. It was very well worth the 10-year anticipation. So yeah, I'll give it a 4.5.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5 as well. I think it's like 4.75, but I mean that's too specific. So yeah. and here's the thing: if the next movie is as good as this one, I'll probably give this one a 5. It's just I'm reserving that 0.5 because I don't know if those deaths are going to feel less cheap with the next movie.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though. Before I reveal the Rotten Tomatoes score, has this supplanted your favorite Marvel movie as your new favorite?
Me personally, yes. Just because, this is what it's all been leading to, and it paid off so fucking well. And yeah, so I would say that it is my new favorite Marvel movie because they did, this was the plan the whole time. This movie was what they were leading up to for 10 years, and it worked. It worked so damn good. And yeah, so I would say that, and it's people would kind of be, I'll just say it, they'd be kind of stupid to say that it's not the best made Marvel movie, if that makes sense. But quite surprisingly, it didn't have the largest budget for a Marvel movie. I think the largest budget was Age of Ultron.
I believe that because Age of Ultron was... that was a CGI fuckfest for a whole nother reason. Mm-hmm. What about you, Matt? Has it supplanted your favorite Marvel movie?
Oh, yeah. Hands down. Hands down. It's the best thing they've ever made. It's incredible.
There are some things that I like better in other movies, and I do like Doctor Strange's movie. I still love Ant-Man, but I think this movie kind of has everything I want out of a Marvel movie, including a villain that is actually memorable and sees himself as the hero of his own story in a way that even the most cynical among us can kind of be like, I can see it. And this should have been called Thanos Infinity War because the movie follows him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I mean, my biggest takeaway is DC takes some fucking notes because your shitty movies are definitely in hot water now.
Oh, they did better than that. They're not taking notes. They decided to take the note taker. And having Brian Michael Bendis, one of the major forces behind the MCU being what it is today, having him working for DC and working on Superman, no less, tells me that DC is serious about not doing a cash grab because that failed. They want to tell some stories. And the fact that Kevin Feige wants to tell stories is the reason the Marvel Cinematic Universe is where it is.
Well, let me put it this way. Yeah, Bendis is over at DC, but that may or may not ever translate to film.
Oh, I expect it will. I mean, what Bendis did
DC has been better comics for the last couple years now. Marvel's comics have not been great for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. But what Marvel's been doing in that time is teeing up characters to be ready, to be movie ready. And that's been through Bendis. Bendis is the reason we were able to get the Defenders where they are. Bendis is the reason Iron Man is who he is. So much of what the MCU is right now, both on the small screen and the big, is because of someone like Brian Michael Bendis being able to do all of this. And I feel like now that DC has him, they're not just going to have him write some Superman movies, or some Superman comics. They're going to have him make Superman movie ready. They're going to make
Superman great again?
There you go.
Let me put it this way. I would like to believe that in a perfect world, but it's DC, and they haven't done anything right yet.
No, you're right.
That's hey, you know what? That Aquaman movie is coming out this year. I haven't seen a trailer for it yet.
I forgot
it's
about
coming
that.
out.
Forgot about that.
Supposedly. And Kristen Wiig is playing Cheetah. Cheetara, whatever. Who cares? Great.
Yeah.
Great. Stunt. Perfect. Why don't you just cast Amy Schumer? She's funny. What do you guys think the film has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Probably a 90 to 92, I would guess.
Yeah, I'd say the critics are probably more harsh than the audiences, but I think the audiences would give it a 90.
Critics 84%, audience 93%. Avengers Infinity War ably judges a dizzying array of MCU heroes in the fight against their gravest threat yet, and the result is a thrilling, emotionally resonant blockbuster that mostly realizes its gargantuan ambitions.
That's fair. I would say that's
right.
fair.
It's a little lower than I thought it would have been, but...
I would, now that I think of it, I would have expected Infinity War to be a lot higher because Black Panthers was like almost a 100, right?
Yeah.
Close. I think Black Panther was like 97 or 96. Excuse me.
And I think it's pretty safe to say in this cast that Infinity War was a lot better of a film than Black Panther was. So yeah, that's actually kind of surprising.
Well, the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes would agree with you that the audience seemed to like Infinity War more than Black Panther. So
yeah.
The thing I always chuckled about was all those like things coming out that was like Black Panther's breaking all these records. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm like it's not gonna last.
Infinity War is coming out, guys. Like any record that exists now
is about to be shattered.
Going to be broken completely with a snap of a finger.
If people if people thought that Avengers wasn't going to do well, you're probably just a waste of space on Earth.
I would have been more surprised if Infinity War hadn't broken the record.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it still remains to be seen whether Infinity War will break the all-time domestic record. It's had a great opening, and I'm sure it will continue, but Black Panther has an incredible domestic run. So it's not going to be that easy to beat.
That's fair. I don't know. I mean, I've seen Infinity War one more time than I saw Black Panther. So
yeah, but you're also not the audience.
What does that mean, Matt? What are you aiming for?
Listen, white boy. This movie.
Listen here, Cracker. We don't want you at the Black Panther screening, seeing it more than once with all your white friends.
Avengers Infinity War is just the third Avengers movie. That's great.
I think what you're meaning to tell me is Avengers Infinity War is made for white people.
No, what I'm saying is Avengers Infinity War is waiting for the next one to happen, and the one before it was great as well. Whereas Black Panther was the first one of its kind, and there was a kind of grassroots, massive groundswell of support. There was a cultural shift that film brought about, and I don't know that Avengers is going to be able to have that kind of impact from a long range. Still, 4 months from now, will it be in the top 5 movies? I don't know. We've got a summer full of movies coming, so. I think it's not a foregone conclusion that Avengers is going to shatter all of those.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, we don't have our theme yet for the month of May, but I can tell you this much. We'll be talking about Deadpool. I'm assuming Matt will be there for that. And we're also going to be talking for a film no one fucking asked for, and frankly, no one should give a flying shit about. That's Solo, a Star Wars story. Which,
Guys, I don't know about you, but I was around when the Ewoks had a cartoon, so I am delighted by any opportunity to watch Star Wars anything. So if they want to throw a Star Wars movie at me on my birthday, I'm going to go watch Solo.
But you'll be there for that one, I hope, because that movie it looks like a train wreck.
The number of movies that have come out of the Lucasfilm purchase that have been train wrecks, like Rogue One was a complete fucking disaster area making that movie. And I'm not surprised that, Boba Fett turned into such a disaster that it was just straight up thrown back on the shelf. And it makes perfect sense that a movie like Solo, where the pitch in the room sounded pretty good, but the movie wasn't coming together, and then you brought in one of the most legendary science fiction directors of all time to put together a competent film. I'm expecting a competent film.
Hey man, Howard,
it's better.
Ron Howard's a Hollywood yes man.
I'd rather have Ron Howard come in and make the whole movie than have Gareth Edwards make half a movie and have somebody else ghost direct the rest of it and turn it into a complete dog's breakfast that makes no actual thematic sense.
Yeah, Rogue One's not good. But you know what? I think my prediction stands. I think the Solo movie is going to be worse than Rogue One. I think the Solo movie will be the worst thing that has come out of Disney Star Wars so far.
I can agree with that. Yeah,
I think there's a very good chance of that. I think it'll be a different kind of bad than Rogue One. It'll be bad in that it's simply disappointing that it's not great. Whereas Rogue One was just like emotionally confusing because it made no sense.
Well, and let's be honest here. I think most Star Wars fans would rather grumble and moan and pretend like a 71-year-old Harrison Ford is playing a 20-year-old Han Solo than watch someone pretend to be 20-year-old Han Solo. Just saying.
Yeah.
I think most fans would rather just be like, that 70-year-old guy is playing that 20-year-old guy. Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's 20. Then some, Alden Ehrenreich being like, I'm doing my best Harrison Ford impersonation.
I don't know. I was pretty impressed with the young kid they had play Red Skull in this movie. So I think I'm okay.
The young kid. That little whippersnapper there. Oh, lordy. Well, until then, Matt, what have you been up to? Anything you can talk about, or are we still on the hush hush?
Just making movies and that stuff. I've got I'm producing my wife's first feature film. I'm very excited about. She wrote a mob movie that is just, the script is a razor blade. It is so tight. So I'm very excited. It was shortlisted at Sundance this year. So I'm excited to be putting that together.
I thought you were going to say you're producing your wife's film, Avengers 4.
I wish.
We're never talking to Matt again. He's too important for this podcast.
One day, guys. Don't worry.
Someday we'll be like, yeah, that guy directing, what's the most obscure Marvel hero I can think of? Howard the Duck 4. The return of Duck Tits.
Don't even joke. I have a really solid Howard the Duck comic book pitch that an artist, a friend of mine who works for Marvel, has been playing around with. So it could happen.
Matt, if you somehow directed a Howard the Duck movie, I would literally shit and die. I'd be like, I know this guy, he's doing the Howard the Duck movie, and it's going to be better than the last one.
Well, that's
Which is
not
not hard, by the way. Yeah, right. Oh, man. What about you, Tucker? Where can people find you?
Oh, no. They can find me at work. And when I'm not at work, they can find me trying to catch up on this backlog of video games and movies that I have going on.
Yeah, you're not, you don't write anymore for the website because of, real life things.
Yeah. I wish I could still write for the site. Honestly, the problem was that I ran out of time to finish the games that I was writing for in a mannerly time. I couldn't spend a month and a half playing a game, trying to beat it, and then having to write the review after that. It was just too long of a gap, unfortunately.
And that's why I like doing movies, because it's 2 hours and, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a better gig.
I'm glad to still be involved, though. I'm glad to still be involved in the site. somewhat.
And we're glad that you're still involved. And as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Kulturestash. You can follow my wayward co-host Eric on Twitter at Tychomagnetics. I believe you can bother Matt on Twitter at Matt Campagna. I may or may not be correct on
that's
Twitter
right.
handle, but right. Tucker doesn't have Twitter.
I do have Twitter. I just don't use it.
Well, I think you're a smart man.
Yeah, honestly.
And as always, head on over to cultureshock.com where you can find out more about today's episode. You'll find links over to iTunes where you can rate and review the show, and to Patreon where you can kick a couple dollars our way. We got some Ready Player One addendum stuff on there if you really want to listen to people talk about Ready Player One, which if you do, cool. If not, I don't know what to tell you. We are on Spreaker now, so if you want to download the Spreaker app and give the Kulturecast a listen on there, that would help us out. If not, we are on all podcatchers on Android and iOS. And as always, big thanks to Eric and Wavoka and my good buddy Justin for the intro, outro music for the Kulturecast, and we will see you on the next Kulturecast.
You know how we do, I'm just two-step, drink in my right hand, phone in my other hand, getting to the money, oh man, two-step, posted with the crew, yeah, you know how we do.
Hey, two-stepping, know what I'm saying? 1, 2, 1, 2, Benjamin, aka the Black T, you know what I'm saying? Catch me with my crew every day.